Good morning everybody and welcome to March's crochet series at Cuyahoga Falls Library. My name is Marianne and I am excited to get crocheting with you all. For this month we are making fidgets. So our patterns, we have 4 different patterns this month. We have a really simple marble maze. There's a little marble in here that we are moving around. Let me fix the focus on my camera. That you're kind of pushing through just a maze. It's a very nice silent fidget toy. We have these little fidget beaded hedgehogs. And those are the 2 patterns that I'm going to cover in the video tutorial today. We do also have patterns for a worry worm from Teeny Crochets, which are these little guys. And then we have a pocket fidget toy from MBT Creates. It is this Mobius fidget toy. Both of these patterns are on the back of our pattern packet for the month. And they both have a video tutorial already from the original creators. So we just linked to those video tutorials in the pattern. So feel free to go check those if you want to make those patterns. Today we're going to start with our marble maze. So I've got worsted weight acrylic yarn and I'm going to use an H hook. This is a 5mm. You can use a G hook, which is a 4mm or 4.25, 4.5. Really any hook that's comfortable with your gauge. You don't need your maze to be super tight, but you don't want your stitches to be so loose that your marble can come through it. So it's really whatever hook works best for your gauge, or if you're using a different yarn. Alright, we are going to start, we're going to make 2 squares to make up our maze. So I'm going to start with a slip knot. And we begin by chaining 17. Now I'm doing chain 17. That is to make a maze about this big. You can, however, make it smaller or bigger. Your foundation chain is going to be the width of your finished maze, so feel free to add stitches. To make a perfect square, you're just going to do the same amount of single crochet rows as your foundation chain, -1 since we skipped that first one. So for example, since I did chain 17, and when I turn, I skip that first chain. So I'm going to end up with 16 stitches in my foundation row. You're going to do 16 rows of single crochet in order to get a perfect square. So if you are adjusting at all to change the size, just remember that to get your square. And all we're doing is I'm going to single crochet in each chain stitch. My last one is always really tight. I have a really tight gauge. There we go. Alright, so once you have your foundation row, all we are doing is we are single crocheting for another 15 rows until you have a square. And then once you finish one square, you'll make another one, and then we will get to constructing our maze. I'll do one more row with you, and then I'll pause the video to finish my squares, and then I'll resume the video so that we can assemble our marble maze. Alright, that's 2 single crochet rows. I'm going to keep going exactly like this, make 2 squares, and then I'll resume the video. See you all soon. Alright, welcome back. So I've got my 2 squares here. Now if you lost count of your rows and you want to know if you have 16 or not, if you're looking at your square, each of these, call them hourglasses, each of these sets of hourglasses is 2 rows. So you want to have 8 of those. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that means I have 16 rows because each of these is a set of 2 rows. Another way to see if you have the right number of rows, or if you just want to make sure you have a perfect square, you can always fold the corners. So it was like bottom right corner to top left corner, and just make sure that the edges align to make triangle, and that means you have a square. If it's not a perfect square, that is also okay, as long as your squares are relatively the same size. When we sew them together, it will kind of hide any of those little imperfections. Now, since our marble is going to be inside of our maze, I am going to want to weave in my ends. And I can kind of hide them on the inside of the maze, but I don't want too much of this yarn to be inside the maze because it's going to be a little bulkier and it's going to make it harder for my marble to work through the maze. So I'm just going to weave that tail in a few stitches and then trim it. Do the same for this one down here. And trim. Alright, and from here, I'm going to consider these the quote-unquote wrong side of my squares. And the only reason being is this side of your crochet, it's not going to have these even hourglasses. You'll see this one's only a half hourglass because the opposite side on our foundation chain looks like this. So I'm going to consider that the wrong side, which means I'm going to want wrong sides together. A little fray of yarn right there. I'm just going to trim off. So I'm going to match it up like that. I'm going to match chain row to chain row, last row to last row, corner to corner, just to have my little square. And then I'm going to take a yarn needle. Mine is plastic. You can use a metal one. You can also use a crochet hook and just crochet around the edges. But I'm going to do a yarn needle. So I'm going to give myself a generous amount of yarn here. And I am going to do it double just for extra security. And I'm going to start by going just through this top. I'm going to start at this corner. I'm going to go through just the top layer. And I'm going to pull it through almost all the way. And then I'm going to go back in. I'm going going to start pulling through, and right before that loop closes, this loop down here, I'm going to take my yarn needle and insert into there, just to do kind of a beginning knot. Now another thing you can do is you can also knot these two tail ends just for some extra security. Make sure it stays there. And then I am going to want to trim those so it's not too bulky on the inside. But now I have a good knotting starting stitch. Now I'm going to start by going up this edge, and I'm going to do it so it's kind of like a wraparound stitch. So now coming from the top, I'm going through the bottom layer and the top layer. And you can do it, so like from here, you could do it weaving in and out. I could go in from the top to the bottom, but I'm going to do it so that I keep going in through the bottom layer first. But that is a stylistic choice on my end. I just kind of like how the stitch looks along the edges, but you can do whatever you want. You want to make sure they're relatively tight, and while there's not, when you're going along the edges, there's not like set stitches to go into. You just want to make sure that you're staying relatively close, that there's no big holes. And you also want to make sure that you're going through that very edge stitch along the edge. You don't want to go in like over here, because that'd be too far down. Alright, so it's going to be at least a little bit easier coming to the top. It's also a good place to check in, make sure my edges are still lined up. But now I actually have single crochet stitches from that last row that I know to go into. So it's a little bit better here on top. Alright, we are getting there. Straighten out my yarn here. Sometimes the yarn really likes to twist, which isn't a huge deal, but I'm going to make it untwisted. Ooh. hit my camera there, I'm so sorry. I did just flip it just as I'm going to this last end, so now I am going in from the top to the bottom, but it is the same direction, it's just because I flipped my work. Alright, we're coming up on the last edge, closing up this last side of our square. I almost gave myself enough yarn, but I am going to have to cut off and then recast on. But this is a good point to remember to have your marble, and this is just a standard size marble, and I'm just going to put it inside my square. At this point, I'm going to do a knot similar to how I did at the beginning. I'm going to go in, and before I close that loop, I'm going to turn around, put my yarn needle through that loop, pull it tight, and I can even do another one of these. Just like that. And then I actually can use my yarn needle to weave in this end. So weave in and out a couple times, come out right about here, and then I'll trim that yarn. I'm so close to having the perfect amount of yarn. Marbles in there. I only need a little bit this time just to finish up. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to start by going through just one layer, pull it most of the way through, and then do a knot just in that top layer. And then continue just for this last little bit that I need to close up. Alright, and same thing at this end here. I'm just going to pull that into a knot. And then I can use my yarn needle to weave in this end. I am going to stay pretty close to the edge. If it's a short tail, it's not going to add a whole lot of bulkiness to the inside, but I just want to make sure that there's no yarn that's going to interfere with the maze that we're going to push our marble through. So I just push this through to the back to make it easier, and then I'm going to cut it. And as you move your marble through, if any of the ends pop up, you can trim those as it happens. But we have our square and we have our marble in there. So next part is to make our actual little maze. We're going to make like little paths that it can go through. And you can do this in same color yarn or a different color yarn. I'm going to use a different color yarn just to make it easier for you all to see what I'm doing. So you can take a yarn needle and cast on with your other color yarn and weave in and out. And I'll show you exactly where we're going to do that. But you can weave in and out kind of to create those paths. But what I'm going to show you is how to do surface slip stitches. So you can make your maze however you want. All I'm going to do is I'm going to do like a line here until right about here so that this becomes a path. And then I'm going to do another line about right here. And then a last line all along here. And that's just going to create like a zigzag path that I can push my marble through. You can't really see it on this one because this one I did in all one color, so you can't really see the lines that I made, but they are there, and it just makes it a little more fun when you're pushing your marble through. It's a nice little silent fidget toy. So, surface slip stitches, we are going to be crocheting, but we're going to be attaching the 2 layers of our square. So I'm going to make a slip knot with my yarn, but I'm not going to put it on my hook yet. I'm going to start roughly, it's like 1 inch or 4 rows. So 2 of these hourglass sets. I'm going to start 4 rows down from the top of my square and insert right into this edge stitch. I'm going through both layers. I'm going to put my slip knot onto my hook, pull it tighter, and then I'm going to pull my hook back through, and I'm going to grab that slip knot and pull it to the other side. So now my yarn is on the back side, my hook is on the front side. I'm going to insert my hook into that space. You can see I'm coming out of this one. I'm going to go right into that next space through both layers, grab the working yarn, pull it through to the front side, and then pull it through that slip knot. The first one's going to be really tight. That is okay. Also, my yarn is fraying. That's okay. We're working with it. But that is one surface slip stitch. So I'll do it again, inserting into that next space. And I would just double check that on the other side you're coming out also 2 rows down. I'm going to grab that yarn, pull it through both layers to the front side, and do a slip stitch so top loop comes into the bottom loop. I'll do a couple more and then you can see how it looks. They are going to feel really tight. It is going to feel really weird going from the back to the front. But you can see it's making these neat little slip stitches that are attaching the front and back. So now, the reason I did 4 rows is because we can actually push our marble and it fits into that space. So we're making kind of like paths for it to go through. I'm going to do this until about 1 inch from the left side because I still want there to be space for my marble. Alright, I'm going to say that's about 4 stitches. I'm going to double check. I'm going to push my marble over and just make sure that it can make through that space, and it can. So at this point, I'm actually going to take out that last stitch. Only because if I do 1 extra stitch, it won't work, but this is an easier way to cast off. So I cut my yarn, I'm going to go back through and kind of redo that stitch, but this time I'm going to pull that end all the way through and pull it tight. Again, I'm going to weave my end in, but I'm just going to hide it once on the inside, because since it's in a different color, if I weave it through, it'll be visible and very obvious. But it is already a slip stitch, so it should be pretty secure. I'm just going to make sure there's a little bit of a tail inside, but not too much. Trim that. You can see on this side, you can hardly see that path at all. On this side, you have those neat little stitches. So again, you can design whatever maze you want for your marble. I'm going to do, we're going to do a line here. I'm going to go 4 rows down from here, so right here, And we're going to go from the left this time. So same thing I did before. I'm going to do a slip knot. I'm actually going to flip my work upside down. Going through the edge here. You mean those ends are already peeking out? That's okay, I'll trim those later. Do my slip knot, pull it through to the other side. And same thing, insert into the next space, double check. That was the wrong space on the opposite side, so I'm going to do that again. That's why it's good to double check. Cool. Took a second, but we're back. I had to make sure, and it's not a huge deal if it's uneven, but what had happened was I came out on the back side at a different spot than I wanted to, so that it looks the same as the front side. So just adjusting there. Have my slip knot, pulling it through to the side, into insert, and yeah, we're in the right spot now. Again, I think that these surface slip knots are neater and they look nicer, but you don't have to do it this way. You are more than welcome to just take a yarn needle and kind of weave in and out to attach the two sides and form a path for your marble. So I did about 12 stitches for the last one. Again, it depends too on whether you made yours the same size as mine. Alright, this one's going to be my last stitch for this path. So I'm going to go through the back. I am off screen, my apologies. I'm going to cut this yarn here, grab the end from the back, pull it through, pull it through, pull it tight. Hide that end on the inside, trim. This yarn that really likes to fray, which is okay, we're working with it. I'm going to trim this as well. So I've got two paths I can push my marble through. And then the last one I'm going to do, following the same pattern, we're back on our right side. This time I'm going to go 4 more rows down. Those, 2 hourglasses. Now I'm also about an inch from the top. I'm going to do a line right here. Sure, I'm coming out same row that I want to on the back side. Grab my slip knot. Loosen my slip knot because I made it too tight. does feel very awkward, but it's gonna look great and it's gonna be fun. Alright, we have our marble maze. So now there is a nice little zigzaggy pattern that I can push my marble through. I feel like the camera does not do it justice. It is a lot more fun than it looks. It looks really simple, but it actually is very entertaining. Cool. So that is a simple marble maze. Their next one is slightly more exciting. I'm sure it's the one that most of you are most excited for. We are going to do a little fidget beaded hedgehog. So for this little guy, I used all same color beads. You can do that if you would like, or you can use a variety. What I'm going to do, once again, using worsted weight acrylic, I am going to switch to a G hook this time. This is a 4.5 millimeter that I'm using, just because since this is going to be holding polyfill, I do want it to be a little bit tighter. Yarn. This yarn also doesn't fray quite as easily, so that's exciting for me. Now, the first thing you want to do is select your beads. So I have an array of colors. When you are putting them on, and we'll get to that soon, but when you're putting them on, you're going to need at least 24 beads. You can do more or less if you would like, but this pattern calls for 24, and it's 6 rows of 4. So I have 4 here, 4 here, 4 here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to load my beads in sets of 4. I'm kind of going to go for like a rainbow E. And I just have regular pony beads. There's the plastic ones with the large holes. That way our yarn can fit through them. I am going to use a yarn needle, and we are going to load our beads onto our working yarn. Just like so. And I'm loading kind of in stripes of 4. Again, you can do an array. You don't have to do any kind of pattern. You can do all one color. It's all up to you. It'll also make more sense, I promise, once we get to the actual adding of the beads. So if it just sounds confusing right now, just feel free to just load any color bead, make a practice one, and then it'll all make sense later. For such a tiny little project, you do need a lot more beads than you think. This seems like so many, but once you start crocheting, you will realize that you really need all 24. Alright, those are my 24 beads. Give myself some extra yarn here. There we go. And those beads are just going to stay on our working yarn, and we're going to ignore them for the time being. I'm going to take that end of the yarn, I'm going to slip knot onto my hook, and you are welcome to start with a magic ring here with your working yarn, or you can do a chain 2. I'm just going to do a chain 2. And then either in the center of your magic ring or in that second chain from your hook, you're going to do 4 single crochet. Now for round 2, we are single crocheting. It's going to be really, really tight, but this is how you're going to get that little nose shape on your hedgehog. We're going to single crochet in each of those 4 stitches. Usually this is where we would decrease. Here we are single crocheting. Alright, once you are 4 stitches around, round 3, now we are increasing. You're going to do 2 single crochet in each stitches, so we end up with 8 stitches. Alright, for round 4, we're still increasing. We are going to do a single crochet in the next stitch. Not just normal single crochet, we're going to do increase in the next stitch. So 1 regular single crochet and then 1 increase. We're adding another 4 stitches, so we're going to get to 12. Another regular single crochet, and then I'll do 2 stitches in this next stitch. 1 more regular single crochet. Count and make sure. Increase in this last stitch. Single crochet, and then I go back into that same stitch to increase. We're now at 12 stitches. We're going to increase 1 more row. Adding another 4 stitches, we're going to get up to 16. So this time I'm going to do 2 regular single crochet. So 1 regular in that stitch, 1 regular in the next stitch, and then in this 3rd stitch I'm increasing again. Alright, we're now at 16. Our hedgehog has a little nose. So round 6 is where we're going to add the ears. So for the ears, I'm just going to focus the camera just to make sure you can see everything okay. I'm going to single crochet into this first stitch. So it was one regular single crochet, and then on the spot I'm going to chain 3. So 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to go back into that same stitch again and do a regular single crochet. All this does is that chain 3 is just going to serve as a little ear for our hedgehog. So now we're going to single crochet in the next 4 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's going to be 3 stitches between each. So I did 4 single crochet. Now in this one, I'm going to do another chain 3. And then I'm going back into that same stitch and doing a regular single crochet. So you'll see those 2 chain 3s. They'll stick up more once we do another round, but those are going to be our ears. Now we're just going to single crochet in the remaining 11 stitches. At the end, you should be right back to where that next stitch is where your first ear is. So for round 7, we're just going to single crochet again in each stitch around. So when you get to that chain 3 space, we want to go kind of from behind the ear, and we're going to go into that stitch that's kind of underneath the chain 3. And I'll show you what it looks like. So that was just one stitch kind of behind the ear. We're kind of just ignoring that chain 3. And then we're just going to keep going in those regular stitches. So that's another 3 single crochet. I am at my other chain 3, and it's this space right down here, but I want to make sure that my chain 3 is in front of my hook. So I'm going to go into that space like this, do a regular single crochet, and then just move on. So you'll see from the back it looks like that. We have a regular single crochet row now, and your ears are sticking out, so your hedgehog has little ears. Going to keep single crocheting until I reach where my ear starts. Alright, so now is the fun part of adding your beads. So round 8, I'm going to go to the stitch right before my ear. I had one more stitch to go, my bad. So this first stitch right here, the one directly behind the ear, for round 8 we are single crocheting with bead. And what that means is before I even insert my hook into that stitch, I'm going to take that first bead on my working yarn and I'm going to pull it up. And then I'm going to insert into that stitch. And I'm grabbing the yarn on the other side, so I'm making sure that that bead is in my stitch. At this point, you see it's kind of like behind. I'm going to push it to the front and finish my single crochet stitch. That is a single crochet with bead. Next stitch is just a regular single crochet. I'm single crocheting with bead again. Make sure it's on the outside. Do single crochet, regular single crochet with bead, make sure to push it to the front, one more regular single crochet, and and then single crochet with bead. You should have 4 beads. Might look a little lonely right now, but once we add the rest of them, it'll look a lot better. And then we're just going to single crochet in the remaining 9 stitches. At this point, if you are going to use safety eyes, I think on the pattern I actually wrote this in round 7, but you can do it at any point before you close your project. It's just easier to do it earlier rather than later. This is where you'll add your safety eyes. You do not have to use safety eyes. You can always embroider on later or use felt and hot glue on, really anything that works for you. But I'm going to insert my eyes. I usually do mine like 2 rows before the ears, 2 rows past the nose. Something this small, it can be a little tricky to push them on. Attaching washer, there we go. And then I just want to make sure that I do it evenly on both sides. Oh, he's got eyes. Alright, so now we're going to continue. So round 9. Now you're just going to be repeating round 8 and 9 for the remainder of your beads. The difference between the two is we want our beads to be arranged in stripes. So for next row, you'll see there is a bead right here, which means I don't want to add a bead into this stitch. So I'm just going to do a regular single crochet. This next space is a stitch where in the last row I just did a regular single crochet, which means this row I'm going to add a bead. So it's the reverse of the pattern we were following for the last row. Single crochet 1, add a bead in the next stitch. Single crochet, single crochet with bead. Oop, got ahead of myself. Bring up your bead before you insert. Bead, and then this is a regular single crochet, and then I need 1 more bead. So another thing to remember is you're adding 4 beads every row. For this one I did 4 different colors. Well, I did 6 different colors, but 4 beads to different color every row that I'm adding. So I just did my orange beads. We are single crocheting in the next 9 stitches. I'm just untangling my yarn. It got a little tangled off screen here, so that's what I am fixing. Alright, for this one we're on round 10 and it says to repeat round 8. So I did my 9 single crochet. This next stitch is a single crochet without a bead, which means I do want to add a bead there. So single crochet with bead, regular single crochet or single crochet without bead, single crochet with bead. If you ever do get lost, just remember if there's a bead right there and that it'd be hard anyway to add a stitch. to add a bead on top of a bead, so you'll kind of feel that it feels wrong. You are also welcome to add more beads or take out beads. This was just an easy pattern I found to add. So we added our 4 yellow beads. You'll see following this pattern just makes it so they're arranged in rows like this, which just looks really nice. It spaces them out so it's not too crowded, but still looks like the little prickles on a hedgehog. Alright, we're single crocheting again. Round 11 is a repeat of round 9, which means we're doing regular single crochet because that is a stitch with a bead. Because the main thing that you're alternating is one you start with bead and one you start with single crochet and alternate that single crochet with bead, which you probably did realize by now, but it's one of those things that I feel like you have to do it for it to make sense. So I was single crochet with bead, single crochet, single crochet with bead, single crochet without bead, single crochet with bead, sometimes the beads do make your stitches really tight and kind of hard to get into. It'll be worth it because it's so cute, but it is kind of a pain to work with. Make sure your beads are pushed to the front. He's coming together. Alright, we've only got 2 rows left of beads. Alright, repeating of round 8, which means this time we start with a bead. Finally on the blue beads, which are my favorite color. So then single crochet in next stitch, single crochet with bead, single crochet in next stitch, single crochet with bead, single crochet without bead, single crochet with bead, and then single crochet without bead to finish our bead row, and then single crochet in the next 9 stitches. This is our last one. It's a repeat of round 9, which means we are starting with a single crochet, which is good because our bead is right there. Single crochet with bead. And last bead. To stretch out my yarn, it's kind of curling in on itself. Alright, we're single crocheting in the remaining 9 of that round. We have a little rainbow hedgehog. Alright, for round 14, we are going to be decreasing. We're going to decrease at the same rate that we were increasing earlier. So we're going to start with single crocheting in the next 2 stitches, and then single crochet 2 together to decrease, 2 regular single crochet in the next 2 stitches, single crochet 2 together, single crochet 2, single crochet 2 together, and you're doing that 4 times to get around. We are going back to 12 stitches. Crochet 2 together. And at this point, it's a good idea to stuff. Before you close that hole too much, you want to stuff your hedgehog. I'm just using regular polyfill today. I'm going to take my hook out while I do this. You can use old plastic bags, you can use fabric scraps, really anything, other yarn scraps. Especially with something this small, it doesn't take a whole lot to stuff them. I do like to take another crochet hook or even a pencil to kind of push that stuffing in, especially when we've got his nose up here. Make sure that some polyfill gets into the nose. And I will make him a nose later. I'm probably going to cut it out of just black felt. You can also embroider with a yarn needle with some black yarn. I only have safety eyes, but they're, ooh, he's fled. There are also safety noses in different sizes that you can get as well. So that is an option. Cool. I want to stuff him. It was maybe a little too much stuffing. I want to stuff him so that he's a fun fidget toy. He's fluffy, and also so that it keeps those beads kind of pushed out, because you will probably notice as you're crocheting, sometimes they get pushed in. Once it's stuffed, it helps to keep those beads out. But you don't want to stuff him so much that the stitches are stretched and you start seeing the polyfill through the stitches. Doesn't take that much stuffing because he's just a little pocket hedgehog. I'm just redoing the stitch from the last row that came out when my hedgehog fled off the table. Alright, we're in our last row. So we're just going to do 1 regular single crochet and then single crochet 2 together. Getting back down to 8 stitches, which is pretty small. Once you're back down to 8, I'm going to go ahead and fasten off. And you can either use your tail, you can leave yourself a somewhat longer tail, and to close him, we're just going to weave this tail in and out of those stitches from our last row. And then close it like a drawstring. So I'm going to weave through this last stitch. I'm just going to add just a little bit more stuffing now that we did that last row. And then I'm going to pull and it'll close it like a drawstring. To knot, I like to come in, so my end is over here, I like to come in on this side, pull that end through, pull it tight, and then I'll do that again. And maybe one more time. Do it as many times as you feel is necessary to close the hole And then when you're done, same method that we did for when we were doing the marble maze, I'm going to use that loop, not pull it all the way tight, because I'm going to put that end through the loop and then pull it tight. And then, nice thing about amigurumi is that we're just going to hide that end on the inside of our project. And there we have our little beaded fidget hedgehog, which I love these little guys. I think they're super cute. They're pocket size, so they're easy to carry around, and they're really fun to fidget with. Thank you so much for watching this video. Remember that if you also want to make our worry worms from Teeny Crochet or our Mobius fidget toy from MBT Creates, those video tutorials are also on YouTube, and their patterns are linked on the handout that you will get in class. So yeah, thanks again for watching, and looking forward to seeing you later this month.